It's going to be quite a strange one, this, because I'm kind of got to think of the questions myself, but here we go. So my name's Tracey. I'm 45. I'm from Nottingham. I live with my wife Pauline and our two little fur babies, although at the start of lockdown we only had one. She's Willow, my little baby, and often describe her as my best friend, to be honest. I have two grown-up stepdaughters, Alex and Zoe, and I describe myself as happy, just happy in my life with my family, a very sort of close unit. I spent a lot of my life not being particularly happy, and I think over the last few years since Pauline and I got married, I would say that I've been the happiest that I've ever been. And I'm a photographer. I've been a photographer for 15 years, and if you were to ask me, I'd say that my entire identity really was tied up in being a photographer. I'm a commercial photographer, very busy commercial photographer, but at heart landscapes is what I love and travel is what I love. And I would, if I were to describe myself, I'd say that I'm an adventurer, I think, really at heart, and I love to be out trying new things and being spontaneous. And at the start of this year I was in Cornwall for a week doing some landscape photography, and if I'm honest, I kind of look back at that week now and think that's kind of the last week before lockdown where I felt that everything kind of felt in its place, really. You know, I was out doing what I loved, the weather was fabulous, I got some great shots. You know, I wasn't with Pauline, I was with my friend Steve, and I was away from home, but that kind of suited us in many ways. But I look back now and I kind of think that, you know, after 15 years of being a photographer, I wouldn't say I was in a rut, but I'd been doing a lot of the same kind of things, and I didn't see it at the time, but I felt like there was a bit of restlessness there in terms of work and the kind of work that I did. And given how much has changed since then, it's all been good stuff, but I kind of wasn't consciously aware that I needed that change, I guess. But I'm quite a routine-based person, and I, you know, my wife Pauline would go out 9 to 5 every day, and I would walk Willow first thing in the morning, and I would go out and do my thing and come home, and it was kind of my domain, really. And I refer back to Cornwall, and I remember watching the news one night with Steve, and this virus in China was sort of on the news, and I remember having a conversation with him about whether it was going to impact us, and I suppose at the time I kind of didn't really think that it would. And I came back and I carried on with work, and I don't really remember when I became sort of conscious that the virus was going to impact us in the way it was. I mean, Italy went into lockdown. It still felt to me like an abstract thing, really. And then work started to be affected because I do a lot of PR and event type photography. People started to question whether events should go ahead. And I remember sort of mid-March I did a conference. And there were 200 or 300 people at this conference in a room, and we were talking about it and socially distancing, but it felt very strange. And I look back now and it's weird to me that even went ahead, because I don't know, the world was sort of changing quite quickly, but it just sort of all seemed to happen so fast after that. In a very short space of time, a lot of work was cancelled, and in the space of a few weeks, it literally felt like everything that I'd worked so incredibly hard to build sort of crumbled down around my ears, really. And a lot of work was cancelled. And interestingly, the national lockdown actually happened on my wife's birthday, which was surreal. And at that point, you know, I'd gone from having a very busy diary and lots of work booked in to having virtually nothing. And, you know, she'd been sent home from work, the place she worked had sort of closed, and suddenly we were just at home with no idea whatsoever what was going to happen sort of moving forward. You know, she was likely to be redeployed, but we didn't know that, so that was home. And if I'm honest, I kind of felt really cast adrift, and she'd probably hate me for saying this, but in some ways I kind of felt like my space had been invaded, because I'd been used to having the home space, and suddenly she was there all the time, and neither of us, like everybody really I suppose, didn't have a Scooby-Doo what we were doing and what was going to happen. And I think for a while there I felt a bit sorry for myself, and that's not the person I am. I've rebuilt my life many times as an adult, and I'm used to doing that, and I'm used to kind of picking myself up and dusting myself off. But I think I had to go through a period at that point where I kind of did feel sorry for myself a little bit and thought, right, what am I going to do? And I was trying to get out, taking pictures of the city and rush hour when everything was so quiet and we were in lockdown. And then I kind of didn't feel like I wanted to share them, because there was this element of feeling like I was being judged by people for going out when we were in lockdown. So that identity that I talk about as being a photographer, I felt like that had been taken away from me, and I couldn't share what I was taking. Some people loved it, other people were quite critical of it, really. So I suppose I started to think about how I could be going out officially, I suppose. So I had some links with Notts Police, who I'd done some work for. So I contacted them and asked them if they'd give me permission to be out working during lockdown, and they said yes. They extended that to other clients as well. So that kind of felt like the start of something very different. So I started going out and doing work, and I put the word out, and that kind of, it's a strange thing. It didn't matter then if people were critical, because I kind of felt like I was allowed. And I find that quite a bizarre concept, really, the way it was at that time, that it really was everybody, and still does to a degree, kind of had to justify everything they were doing for fear that people would be critical of them, I suppose. So I got that permission, and then I started going out, taking more pictures around the city, and I got a few photography jobs, which kind of made me feel like I was doing something again, I suppose, really. And then out of the blue, a client asked me, that's my dog, by the way, in the cage. We've got a new little puppy, I'll come on to him in a bit. A client asked me if I'd do some video clips at a job I was doing, and if I'm honest, videography was not something that I'd ever wanted to do. And I said yes, because there weren't a lot of comms people sort of going out doing things like that at the time. I said yes, I went out and did it, and actually surprised myself that I quite enjoyed it, really. And I did that a few times for a few sort of, just short social media videos for people. And then I was asked if I wanted to have a go at sort of making my own videos from start to finish, so contacting people, going out, getting the footage, and then having a go at editing. And I talked it through with Pauline, and we kind of decided that I had nothing to lose by doing that, really. So that kind of started a whole new area for me, but kind of came with its own issues, really, because life sort of felt like it was already topsy-turvy. And I suddenly had to go out and learn a whole new skill. So I'd kind of gone from probably being a little bit stuck in a rut in terms of, I was comfortable, I suppose is the best way to describe it. And suddenly I was massively out of my comfort zone. And I've not ever been a person that's been worried about being out of my comfort zone. I kind of thrive on it. But in lockdown, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but it felt good to be safe. So kind of doing the things that I'd always done felt like familiarity that I needed in a time when nothing was familiar. Life was crazy. So I went out and sort of started doing these videos, and mentally I found it quite exhausting, sort of learning all of that and sort of dealing with everything else that was going on. Pauline was redeployed to home care, so she was around people that had got COVID. She was working shifts. She was no longer 9 to 5. So it just for a while felt like we were existing and just kind of going out and surviving and doing the best we could. She was doing her job and having to come in and sort of almost strip off at the door and go to the shower, and we were dealing with all of that. I was learning this new skill, and it all just felt like it was bonkers at a time that was bonkers anyway. And then in the midst of all of that, we'd been looking for a second dog, and we found a puppy. So when life's chaotic as it is, I know what, let's go out and get a little puppy that we've got to train in the midst of doing everything else. So we did that, and love him to bits. He's 4 months old now, Harley. And he's kind of completed our family. And you know, nothing ever, I guess, comes at the right time. Things happen when they're meant to happen, and he very much found us. You know, at the time, I don't think we were necessarily thinking this is what we'd do, but we got him. So I would say really for the last, probably for 3 or 4 months of lockdown, it literally just felt we were skidding along at sort of this rate of knots, doing everything we were doing without a plan. And I kind of talk to people that have been on furlough and they've been in the garden in the sunshine, and I'm a little bit jealous of that, because it's not been like that for us. We've kind of not had many days together in the sunshine where we've been able to sit down and have a drink and relax and chat. It's felt like a version of our life on speed. And it's changed. You know, Pauline's got a new job now. I'd say 70% of the work that I'm doing is videography, and I'm absolutely loving that. You know, the videography is brilliant, and it's shaken my job and my work life up in a way that I could never have imagined. And if you told me, you know, at the beginning of the year that this is where we'd be, both of us, to be honest, I would think that you were mad. You know, that we'd have a second dog, we'd both be doing jobs that we weren't familiar with. Then I probably would have laughed. But then the flip side to that is actually that's not a bad thing, that life has been shaken up in the way it's been shaken up. And I think 2020 will be a year that we all remember for a long time to come. You know, it's been horrific in many ways, but I think we've kind of rolled with it. We've made the best of the opportunities that we've had. I don't know where this new sort of twist in terms of my job is going to take me. I mean, I'm doing this documentary series now, and I kind of felt like a bit of a hypocrite if I didn't take part in that myself, which is why I'm sort of doing this sort of, not interview, because it's, you know, I interview people, and I'm doing this piece to camera. But I felt like my story in terms of change was quite valid in that, really. I mean, I'd wanted to talk a little bit about the type of videos that I've been doing during lockdown. I've been out working with a lot of community groups and food banks and leaders, and I've kind of feel like I've been in this unique position, really, where I've been out and seen the best of the things that have been going on during lockdown, and at the times when I suppose I've felt quite dark, that sort of kept me going, to go out and see these, you know, armies of volunteers that have been furloughed and kind of been at a loose end, and the work that they've done to help people. And that's heartened me, and it's kind of kept me very positive and quite humble, I suppose. It's kept me feeling that there is a lot of good out there, which has been quite difficult at times, especially with the news. And there are elements of the news and social media that I've had to switch off from, because I feel there has been an element of negativity in all of that. So I've thought long and hard about this. Obviously, I've interviewed a lot of people now about their experiences of lockdown, and I've heard a lot of different stories, and I suppose it's made me quite reflective, but I don't know if I can reflect just yet, because I still kind of feel like I personally am in the middle of it all. You know, Pauline's just started a new job, and we're entering this brave new world of both working from home now. And it's weird, last week when she started a new job, given that I felt like my space had been invaded when she first came home, when she went out to work for the full day, I kind of felt a bit bereft that the house was empty again, and I kind of had that space back to myself. And that just felt strange in the way it had felt at the beginning. So our life really has done this complete about turn. So I don't feel like I can reflect just yet on how I feel about it all. I do still feel like we're in the middle of it, and I think doing this project probably reflects that. In terms of the future, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say what's going to happen with the virus, whether we'll get a vaccine, whether we'll go into another lockdown. It just feels like there's a lot of uncertainty around at the moment for me. Well, for all of us, but I feel that quite keenly, and I don't feel like it's easy to plan anything. But I think if this last 6 months has shown us anything, you know, we've had some tough times, I guess, like everybody, sort of being in these four walls and not sort of going out to see friends and seeing family. We've had some tricky times, but we're solid, and I feel like as a family we're solid. And one thing I am absolutely 100% certain of is that whatever life throws at us, we'll deal with it, because we've dealt with this and all of this change. And thank God, I feel more than anything that thank God this hasn't affected my family. Which is a miracle, really, given that Pauline was out working with people with COVID, and I've been out. We've both been incredibly careful and kept social distancing and worn masks and all of those things. But I feel like it's been a minor miracle, really, that we haven't picked COVID up and it's not affected the girls and anybody that I'm close to and close friends. So I feel genuinely relieved that it hasn't kind of touched us personally in any kind of horrific sort of way, and some of the stories that I've heard, and I you know, pray that continues. I mean, me praying, I know it sounds daft, but I do, you know, I guess you know, you never know what's around the corner. One thing I've learnt in life is that it can change in a heartbeat, but touch wood, quickly, you know, we've come out of this relatively unscathed, and there has been change, but sometimes that's what life needs, is a bit of a shake up and to do something different. So grateful is a word I would use. I mean, I love adventures. I'm spontaneous. That's what I tell people that I am. And this, in its own way, it might not be Australia, it might not be the holiday adventures that we go on, but by God, this has been, you know, it's been a roller coaster adventure of a ride this whole year, and it's who knows where it ends. So I guess we'll just keep rolling with it, seeing where it goes, and while ever I've got Pauline by my side and the family here, I feel like I can take on anything, and I think we've kind of proved that, really, in the way that we've dealt with this. So yeah, I think that's kind of my take on it, really. I wanted to talk a little bit about this project as well. I think I decided to do this documentary project on the back of all of the community stuff that I've been doing. I'd interviewed a lot of community groups and leaders about their experience of lockdown and various volunteers and that kind of thing, but I kind of want to now push the boundaries a little bit with the video side of things, and I kind of feel like I don't necessarily want to be a commercial videographer. I like making the social media videos. But I feel quite keenly, having been around so many people that have been at the sharp end of the coronavirus, that it's their stories that I want to tell, and I feel it's important to tell those. And I kind of can't quite put my finger on why that is, but I decided to do this project. I put out a shout out on Facebook for sort of 6 or 8 people to interview about their lives during lockdown, and had a lot of people respond, and I was kind of quite surprised by that. I decided to interview 25 people, so it'll be around about that when it's done. And I'd thought that I'd make a single documentary film out of it, but I kind of started to interview people and realised that actually I would be doing them a disservice by editing those stories down to several minutes. So I've kind of decided to put them out as full interviews as well as a documentary, a single documentary. And I guess this is what I'm kind of talking for now, with the idea that this might be an introduction to that. But I wanted really to say thank you. Thank you so much to the people that have been interviewed for this project. I am absolutely blown away, and I say blown away a lot, and I really mean it in a heartfelt way, that I I have sat down with all of these people and talked to them. I say interviewed them, but it kind of feels like a chat. And I've talked to them about their lives during lockdown, and I genuinely am overwhelmed by their willingness to tell me their innermost thoughts and the things that have happened to them, and to make themselves vulnerable in that process, and to actually give me a real heartfelt account of what they have been through during lockdown, good or bad. You know, there have been positives for people, there have been some horrible, you know, things that people have been through that I've kind of, and I felt honoured to sit and listen to people kind of get, in some instances, really get stuff off their chest, and I think surprise themselves with the things that they have said. And at the moment, I don't know what's going to happen with this project, but I feel like all of the stories are really important ones to tell. And I feel like whether this is important now or in 10 years' time, when we all kind of reflect on 2020, and I'm going to say it, the shitstorm it feels like it's been. But I want to say thank you. I didn't think people would be as open and honest with me as they have been. And I'm honoured that people have chosen me to do that with and have agreed to do it. And I feel like in doing that, they've made me a part of a really special moment. And I can't wait to share this project with people, and for other people to kind of see what my circle of friends and acquaintances and colleagues and people I've worked with have been through, and what their experiences have been. Because I have this thought that this is my kind of circle of people, and every single person out there has their own circle, and whether that challenges them to think about what their circle have been through, and just to actually really understand what we've been through as a country, as a world, as a society, a community. I don't know, it's like I was saying earlier, I can't put my finger on it yet, but it just felt like an important thing to do. And it's certainly the kind of thing that I would want to do more of. So wherever it ends up, I feel blessed in all of this, that people have shared themselves with me, their stories and their lives. And I can't, it sounds treacly, I know it does, but it just, it fills me up, it really does. I guess I can't put it in any other way. And when I think about my future and what life holds for me in terms of work moving forward, the way I felt about this project and how it's felt to get these stories out of people and to listen to their stories and what they've been through, it kind of makes me realise that maybe this is kind of the sort of thing I need to be doing moving forward. And like I said before, if you'd sort of told me 6 months ago that I'd be doing this and that this is how I would feel about doing this, but that's how I've always felt about life. You know, opportunities come up and it has its twists and turns, and you go off in directions that you never expected to go. And this project is a direction that I never expected to go. I mean, I've always been a people person, I've always been interested in people and their stories, but this kind of feels like it takes it to a whole new level. So I hope that people look at this and see it in the same way that I did and are interested by those stories, because some of them are, all of them, some of them are heartbreaking, some of them are uplifting, some are both. And yeah, I think I'm waffling a little bit now in terms of what I'm saying, but yeah, just thank you.